the tight end position, and I'm kind of thinking AJ Barner. He's a fourth rounder, and you look at some of the good tight ends are fifth, third round. I think was Brock Bowers a first rounder, I think, and he ended up being
a big year.
Big year.
Didn't
score a lot of touchdowns, but did have a ton of catches. But yeah, it's kind of interesting looking at this tight end group, and I really liked the year that Barner had, not just because of the catches. He had 38 targets and 30 receptions, but again, and 4 touchdowns, which is pretty amazing for a rookie. But some of the blocks that he had.
Yeah,
I mean, I think he's the complete deal.
Well, and in acknowledging all that, you like who he is moving forward. Now, whether he becomes a major part of the offense or not, we'll find out. But you're paying Noah Fant he's got a cap hit of $13.5 million next year. So I looked at him as a very likely candidate to either restructure at the minimum or they release, because you're going to save $9 million if you release him. That's a guy who had 500 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. And again, to reiterate, I'm not saying it's all his fault, because they just don't really ever seem to utilize the tight end that much in the offense to where you're just piling up stats or anything. So some of that is out of his control. But you've got a cap hit. You're in salary cap hell right now. This seems like an easy fix. Like, all right, we're going to release him. There's $9 million right there, because I think you can get away with A.J. Barner as your primary tight end. Maybe you bring Pharoh Brown back. He's a free agent. He's a heck of a blocker, can catch a ball every now and then if you want to throw the ball to him. He's made that clear. He'll do whatever you want him to do.
Yeah, I like that about him.
Yeah, so he's kind of old school, and maybe bring in another one for depth, but you could sign him and probably another tight end for a lot less than what you're paying Noah Fant at this point.
Yeah, and the good news is you're just paying AJ Barner, his rookie contract. So that's
1.1.
It's funny when you said Noah Fant had 500 yards. I was going to say, is that number 3? But Tyler Lockett, I mean, did it seem like he had 600 yards? I'm kind of taking the conversation a little different way, but yeah, I mean, it just didn't seem to me like he had 600 yards for whatever reason. But Fant, I mean, I don't think that's worth that. I think he's a good player, but maybe he's a guy that you restructure. But I don't know. What would you say as far as a grade goes for? I'm always impressed when somebody has a good rookie year. So, and hopefully he doesn't take a step back. But I don't know. I guess I'd say B. Yeah,
B minus. I mean, again, some of it's out of his control. How often he was out there? How often was he used or utilized out there? Became more as the season went on, but overall impact, yeah, probably B minus. I thought he was solid. He was solid. But we talked to Brady Henderson yesterday of ESPN.com, and he talked about what the Seahawks may do when it comes to Noah Fant.
Fant is an interesting one. I would contend that he was pretty severely underutilized last season and maybe even the year before that. Although the year before that, you had 3 receivers kind of producing quite a bit for you. And so you understand there's, maybe not as many targets to go around. But with Lockett taking a back seat the way that he did this year, I would have thought that there would have been more opportunities for Noah Fant to produce, and it didn't happen, whether that was him not playing well enough or the coordinator not doing a good enough job of designing plays to get him the ball. I think the reason he got paid, 2 years, $22 million, was because he's a big guy who can run. And, he's just a different skill set than A.J. Barner. Barner was certainly more productive as a pass catcher this season, but at least in terms of touchdown catches. But, the reason Noah Fant gets paid is because he can run at that size. And, you do have to have more production to justify that kind of cap hit.
So maybe he's a restructure guy, Dave, based on who the new offensive coordinator is. Because like DK, we talked about, maybe his future is going to rest with the guy they bring in who says, I need that guy for my offense. The way I envision my offense, I turn that guy into an absolute weapon. Talking about Noah Fant, and maybe they have the same feeling about DK. Like, man, I don't like how they used him at all. I would have done this with him and done that with him, and they didn't do any of this. And maybe somebody comes in, whoever the new OC is, and looks at Noah Fant and said, same thing, Brady there. Wow, he was wildly underutilized. This guy can do this, that, or the other. So let's do what we need to do to keep him on the roster. Maybe, he didn't live up to that number, but let's.
Or maybe he's a big A.J. Barner fan.
Yeah,
right.
Or maybe
here.
he could come in the opposite and say, "No, I love this kid, A.J. Barner. What I want to do with this offense, he can do just fine. Let's just get some depth there." But yeah, this is not a necessity for me.
Well, and then the other thing you look at in the offseason, I mean, let's say Noah Fant is one of those guys that gets pissed off. Although I can't imagine that because he's just the nicest dude ever. He really is. But business is business.
Right.
But and then there's talk about we're not going to have DK or Tyler back. So now you have JSN, if that's the case, and then I guess A.J. Barner, and that's it. I mean, that's a lot of receivers. That's a lot of targets that you wouldn't have. So I don't know how they'll treat Noah Fant, and honestly, we don't. I think the most sure thing is that Lockett probably either not here or massively restructured. But as far as the other guys go, now all of a sudden you take Noah Fant out of there. If you're thinking that, like Jordan Babineau, no Geno, no DK, no Tyler, then, well, not only do you not have a quarterback, but you don't have many guys to throw it to.
Yeah, I mean, not that you're aware of at this point. You're going to bring in somebody to occupy those roles. Who they are, we're not sure. But Daniel Jeremiah was talking about this, and he talked about the red zone, which we've talked about some of the problems that exist there with Geno's turnovers, but he talked about good red zone teams. They have star tight ends.
You know what I would also be curious if you went through those teams that you mentioned, because I know just off the top of my head, the two you mentioned were like Baltimore and Buffalo. How are the tight ends for those teams too? Because that is the area of the field where we're having a stud tight end.
Is there any chance?
Baltimore's case, a couple of them.
Yeah, and I don't know if he was getting ready to ask about this guy, but he was then asked if the Seahawks would draft Penn State tight end Tyler Warren with their 18th overall pick.
Oh, man. No. If he is the team that I call games for at 22, I'll be begging them to trade up to 17 from 22.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He is so good, man.
God. He's so good.
Oh, man. He's just like Daniel Jeremiah himself.
He's
so good. Who's the edge rusher Penn State has?
Abdul Carter.
Carter, yeah. I mean, that's the guy.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, I think lots and lots of people have him as the number one pick, possibly. So, but yeah, the tight end that he's talking about, I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, we talked about drafting, but really, if you go and look, I mean, you don't have to, in other words, you don't have to go in the first round to get a tight end, even though it did help to get Brock Bowers.
Yeah, if you got the opportunity to get somebody at that level with where they were picking, certainly.
I like having Pharoh Brown around. Remember, he was the one that said he'd gone to Oregon. We asked him one time, why did he go to Oregon? First of all, cheerleaders and money and gear. And then when, they were playing the Huskies, and he said it was like a bye week, and he really pissed off a lot of Husky fans.
So you really want him back to do that again?
I just think it's funny. I mean, I thought he was great, but he is a good blocker. But we did see him, what was the Arizona game where he caught that bullet that was way over his head? And, I think he was irritated by the stigma that, he's just a blocking tight end.
Well, and he also had a catch where he was dragging people. There was one where he wasn't going down. I can't remember which game it was, but he ran somebody over, had somebody hanging on his back. It was, he had
the angry run. He was actually on the NFL Network for that.
Liked it.
I think it was against Arizona.